I've been struggling a lot this whole trip to try to force myself to talk to the camera. I'm literally on day 7 of this trip, and this is literally the first time that I'm actually talking to the camera. I've been trying to come to terms with the fact that like not every single trip needs to be recorded. Hi, Amanda from the future here. I will be taking over the commentary for the rest of this video because, as you could probably tell, past Amanda was not in a super great headspace. The good thing is that past Amanda had the forethought to write down a bunch of notes while she was traveling because I knew this would happen. So let's jump right back into it, shall we? I've started this ridiculous tradition where I can't leave Portland until afternoon. I'm trying to break this tradition, but it just keeps happening. So, the lovely footage that you see here is of the Gorge, and it was ridiculously hot. And for anybody who has never ridden down the Columbia Gorge when it is stupid hot, all of the humidity from the river makes that heat stupid oppressive. So that was lovely. Also, your feel-good story of the day is that I stopped at the gas station in North Bonneville right before I was going to cross the bridge at Cascade Locks. And I realized that I did not get cash for the toll bridge, and I lamented this to the gal who was helping me at the gas station. And she gave me the money for the toll bridge. It was so nice. There are nice people in the world, guys. Just feel good about it. And we could not call this a June road trip if there was not a random thunderstorm that pelted me with rain. Just one more side note. This trip, I just seem to run into the weirdest people. Like normally on my trips, I have a lot of interactions with strangers because everybody is interested to talk to the girl alone on the bike that's loaded down. But I keep running into really weird people on this one. When I got to Madras and I stopped to like have a snack at Safeway in the parking lot, and this guy in a Subaru pulled up and was like, "Man, that's a lot of stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You're set, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to Montana." I'm like, in my head, I'm like, where is this conversation going? And he proceeded to tell me about how he had a Husky 501, but he couldn't take it on the highway because it wouldn't go fast enough. Just a lot of weird things that weren't connecting while I was talking to this gentleman, so I just kind of nodded along until he left. I had quite a few of those interactions on this trip. It was quite weird. And I don't know if it's just because like my mental headspace on this trip was a lot different than what I am in normally, so maybe I was just putting that out of the universe, or I was getting all the weird ones or something. I don't know. My friend Marissa had done this wonderful big loop around Oregon a few years back, and she was telling me about this hostel that she stayed at in Mitchell, and she just had lovely things to say about them, and it sounded like it would be a fairly cheap place to stay. So I called the wonderful hostess at the Smoky Hostel, let her know that I was coming. When I got there, I was just so pleasantly surprised. The hosts are so lovely. If you're a motorcycle rider, if you're riding through the Journey Through Time section of Oregon, if you're gonna visit the Painted Hills or the John Day Fossil Monuments or anything in that little area right there in Central Oregon, I highly, highly recommend you stopping at the Smoky Hostel in Mitchell, Oregon. I opted for the private room, which was about $35, which is like amazing compared to some of the other lodging options in Central Oregon. They have a full stocked kitchen downstairs, and they have showers out back and like a little area that have hammocks that you can like hang out next to the creek. They had great Wi-Fi, which was good because I had zero cell reception there. If you are going through Central Oregon, highly recommend. Day 2 was mainly just about eating at Miles. My whole goal for the day was just to get to Stanley so I could see the sawtooths. Even in my notes, it just says like, pretty uneventful. When I finally got to the sawtooths, I stopped and took a bunch of photos, and just In the 20 minutes of me setting up and taking photos, I got like 3 bites on my face, I had a bazillion bites on my hands, and I kind of determined that I didn't want to camp in a place that was infested with mosquitoes when I didn't have bug spray. So I accepted defeat. I went into Stanley. I paid way too much for a tourist hotel so that I could have a view of the sawtooths. Now don't get me wrong, the people who owned the hotel were really, really nice. They let me park my bike right in front of my room after a little bit of convincing, but it's definitely a tourist trap. The hotel that I stayed at was actually a restaurant and hotel, so when I got up the next morning, day 3, the gentleman at the bar actually made me a cup of tea, which was so nice and kind of endeared them to me and made me feel less awful about paying almost $120 to stay there. Also, word to the wise, if you plan on staying in Stanley ever, get up really early because the bakery in town is pretty much the go-to place to have breakfast. There is always a line. And while I was standing in line at that bakery to just get something to snack on before I hit the road again, this gentleman in line ahead of me looked at my bike and turned around and looked at me and my motorcycle pants and everything, and he's like, "Is that your bike?" And I was like, "Yes." And he's like, "Are you traveling alone?" I was like, "Yeah." And he asked me if I was ever worried about my safety while I was traveling alone on the bike, and I kind of thought about it for a second. I was like, "No, not really." And he was like, "Good for you, good for you." And I kind of tried to explain to him that, like, when people come up to me or whatever, they're just concerned about me. You're a girl alone on a bike. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Can I feed you? And, like, more often than not, they're more freaked out about the whole situation than I am. And, like, the few instances where it isn't all happy-dory and everybody wants to give me food, it's really hard to explain, but you just have a gut feeling that the situation is not okay and that you need to get out of there. Even if I just, like, have a little bit of a twinge of that, I opt for caution and I leave. Like if I pull up to a place to camp for the night and I just don't feel right about it, I will pack up and I'll move on. That's only ever happened like 2 or 3 times to me, to be honest. I've definitely met people in town that were creepy. Not 100% everybody you're gonna meet on the road is going to be nice people. That's just the way that it is with everything. That would be the way it would be if I was traveling alone in my truck or anything like that. I finally got to see Bay Horse. Now, the first time that I tried to see Bay Horse a few years ago, it was a very different situation. It was pouring, the road was muddy and gross, I was on the Honda Shadow with bald street tires. It just wasn't fun. This time around was much different. It was much, much, much better. Riding that road on the CB was a lot funner than it was on the Shadow, that's for sure. For those who would like to go to Bay Horse, it is about a $5 day use fee now, but there is a gentleman there who will tell you stories about the buildings and everything. He was incredibly nice. And when I got home, I was immediately drafted into bucking bales, as you are when you're a ranch kid. Okay, I think we'll end this episode here. I will pick you up where we left off next week. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you everybody who reached out with their condolences and support. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to all my Patreon supporters. They make these videos possible. If you would like to support me for as little as $1 a month on Patreon, you can get early access to videos like these. If that's not up your alley, that is totally okay. I do have a Redbubble shop where you can get stickers, t-shirts, mugs, all kinds of things with my motorcycle art on them. Links to all those things are down in the description below. Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and in the comments, let me know what is the weirdest conversation that you've had with a stranger while you've been on the road. It could be at a gas station, a rest area, whatever. I'm curious. All right, I'll see you later, guys. Thank you for being here. Hopefully I will be back to my normal, happy, useful self here soon. Also, if you're wondering where I am, this is the upstairs of my house in Montana. I love it so much. There's still so much work to do to the house. I don't know if you can tell from like the vague, blurry background, but it needs some attention. And this is the cleanest room in the whole house, which is why I'm upstairs and I'm not downstairs where it's nice and cool.